Welcome to Paper Cut Crafts. Today we're going to do a twist gate fold card. This is just a template I make. I have a little booklet and I like to make templates so I know exactly what I'm doing. The first thing is to score these lines. This is a 7.5 by 4.25. You have to make sure that the edge scores are made in the correct direction. On my original I made an incorrect fold. So these two inside folds, they just fold like a little booklet on toward you into the inside. Now remember, when you're folding score marks, that the valley fold actually folds on the outside of your fold, and this helps to keep the fibers of the paper from tearing. And then the next angled folds, they will fold in the opposite direction, and that's how you create the twist in the card. The paper I'm using is from the Bird Ballard DSP set. I'm just going to use the same piece, just the opposite sides. And these are cut to fit on the panels, but I still have to cut the diagonal so that they will fit on these folds. Since the gatefold has two separate triangles on either side, and you have to cut it. You have to make sure that you cut your panel piece at the right angle, because if you cut it from the wrong angle, it will not fit. You cannot flip it over unless you're willing to use the other side, and even then it's not guaranteed to actually fit that particular one. So I'm using Freya's bird stamp set and the stitch label dies for this. The stitch label die will go on the front. I'm going to pull out my trimmer here and go ahead and cut those diagonals. I have marked each corner, so I can just slide this in and line up the marks to get this diagonal cut properly. This is not a Stampin' Up! Trimmer, obviously, but we do have a trimmer. I just had this before I was a demonstrator, still works very nicely. To add all these panel pieces that I've cut, I'm just using the snail adhesive. As I placed this piece on the back, I realized that I had cut it so that the feathers were actually upside down. Fortunately, I was able to flip them over and use it in the appropriate spot on the other side. This is one reason why you have to really pay attention to where you're cutting and for which section it is going to be for. I had made a previous mistake where I cut the angle wrong and it just didn't fit at all, so I had to recut the pieces. So you do need to really make sure that your angles are right and that your piece, if it has a directional pattern on it, is facing the right direction. So here I'm just using the reverse side of the DSP that I'm using. It's a nice complement with the colors, and I'm just centering that right into the middle of the card. So when I close this card, my feathers are all nicely lined up. And now in the center, I'm just going to use the Timeless Label die, or punch rather, with the Whisper White. And this is where I'm just going to be able to write my little sentiment into and from. Now this is the stitch label dies, and this is the front piece I'm going to add. You can use a smaller piece, but I wanted to use the Free as a Bird stamp set with words on it, and this was the smallest piece that would both fit the card and the stamp I wanted to use. And I'm just going to place both of them right onto the same block so I can get the alignment that I would like. I'm going to stamp the bird with the Memento Black, and then I am going to stamp the words in the Bermuda bag. And I can do this because of their placement and just carefully making sure I get ink only on those two different pieces where I need them. And I'm just centering this onto my die cut piece and just stamping firmly. As I was looking at this piece that I have just stamped, I realized I had quite a bit of blank openings on the top and the bottom. And the stamp set I'm using has a very nice leaf image. So I've decided to stamp this in the old olive. And I'm just going to add some leaves to the top and to the bottom just to fill it and give it a little bit more of a aesthetic appeal. To color this image, I first did a test piece to make sure that my old olive blends would not actually bleed out the stamped image so you can actually see the leaf. And it does work very nicely. So I colored the leaves with the old olive light blends. And then I just colored in the bird with a few different colors just to make it match the feathers that are on the card and the colors. But actually, as I went through this process of coloring it, it was not coming out the way I had hoped it would be. It was one of those cases where you add more color than you probably should have, and I was not very impressed with my coloring of this particular image, and so I ended up re-stamping it and coloring it again. This time I took out some of the colors and just went with a simple coloring with the blends. Unlike the bird, where less was better, the edge seemed to be a little bare, so I added a little more. So here I just took the blends marker, the Calypso Coral, and I just drew along the edge. When I tested it, it was a little bit too thin, so I went back and added a little bit thicker of a strip around the edge. And I like this a lot more. It gives it an extra little border and a little bit of a pop. To attach the front panel piece, you have to make sure that you are only attaching it to one side of the gatefold, because if you attach it to both, you will not be able to open your card. So be very mindful of where you're adding your snail or whatever adhesive you are using, so that your front piece does not seal shut your card. So in this case, I just attached it to the left side just with a little bit of snail, and then centered it and pressed it down firmly. And here is my finished card. So I appreciate you watching. Happy stamping!